Welcome back, everyone. I have a fun question today, and I'm looking forward to all your answers and how everyone's going to have something different to say about the topic. So, how do you value a AAA game? How much should a AAA game be worth? And I'm talking about the dollar amount on the shelf. How much is the price tag of the game? Let's disregard production costs. Let's disregard how long games take to be made and how many people are working on them. All I want to know is what you feel like personally a game should provide you with, let's say, an $80 USD price tag, which is what's been revealed now for the premium Switch title games, Switch 2 games. I've done videos like this before. I talked about is gaming more expensive today? And when you compare it to 80s, 90s, you see that no, gaming's actually cheaper today. If you compare gaming prices today to a year or two ago, you've seen that Tears of the Kingdom was a little more expensive for the Switch, and we're only getting $10 more pricey as we go to the Switch 2. I've also done videos, and these ones are more relevant to today's topic, or at least how I want to approach the topic. What makes a game good? Looking at gameplay, sound and music, the graphics, and things of that nature. Because when I talk about the value of a AAA game and what I'm expecting when I pay full price for something, spoiler alert, I don't really pay full price for things. We'll talk about that too. I'm really expecting an experience to blow me away, and that game better break into like my top 20 favorite games of all time. So really high expectations if I'm going to be shelling out big bucks for the title. I have 6 categories here that we can use as a framework. If you want to discuss the games in any other way, go right ahead. This is just something for me to help get some thoughts on the paper. Number 1, value for money. Number 2, graphics and design, everything visual. Number 3, music and sound effects. Number 4, story and writing. Number 5, gameplay. And number 6, the feel of the game. So category number 1, value for money. And this, to me, is the most important thing when considering whether a game is worth it or not. What I usually do is I look at the game's price tag, $70. I go, okay, I hope I'm going to get 70 hours of playtime out of it. I look for an hour of playtime for every dollar in the price tag. Now, there's a couple things that I should mention about that. Obviously, if you have a game that's $70, what if it only gives you 40 hours of really quality playtime? Well, that's still worth it, especially if a game ends up breaking into your top 20 games of all time. Clearly, it was money well spent, at least to me, personally. The other thing is that I make the vast majority of my purchases heavily discounted. And I'm not talking 50% off. I'm waiting for sales when games are 70% off plus. Yes, even the AAA titles. This is why I enjoy buying games on Steam. I know I'm buying licenses to games. I'm not actually owning them. But this is why I make a lot of my game purchases on Steam. Why I wasn't even going to get into consoles with this generation, or the last one I should say. But obviously, I have a Switch, and there's Nintendo games and Nintendo exclusives to consider. So when it comes to those, I can't be waiting for Nintendo to drop Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild 70% off. It's not going to happen. I typically evaluate my Nintendo games with a little more scrutiny. I want a little more out of them. And that's why from the selection that I grabbed here, we're going to lose this tower. It is what it is. Unicorn Overlord, I grabbed this one because Vanillaware is going to keep this one on console. They have no plans of making this come out on PC. I don't know, something about piracy. And then here we go. Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury. This is a game that I thought had a really good value for money, especially throwing in Bowser's Fury. Again, disregarding the gameplay. When you just look at the hours that I put into this, and they were quality hours, I really liked Bowser's Fury. I thought it was worth it. Anyways, the list goes on here. Metroid Dread. This was a 10 or 11 hour experience for me, getting 100%. It's a yes for me. I would recommend it. Again, a used copy. I only bought used copies here, discounted copies. I would recommend the game to people, but I realize that this is starting to stretch people's value for their dollar a little bit too thin. The Hyrule Warriors games, again, titles that are almost endlessly replayable, or you could say they are endlessly replayable. Very much worth whatever the price tag is if you're going by hours alone. And even though this video is focusing on the AAA titles, I have the same sort of criteria when I look at indie games. I'm still scrutinizing them heavily. And this is why I love Steam so much, because on the store page, I can look at a $10 game, scroll down, and see that the reviews are mostly positive. Not only that, but every review has the playtime that person has logged playing the game listed. Perfect. It's a game that's fairly well received, a lot of people like it, it's only $10, and it's going to get me about 16 hours of playtime. Even if it's not going to be my ideal genre, it could be a shooter, it could be a racing game or a fighting game. Those ones, I enjoy them, but they're just not at the top of my list. I am still willing to buy it. But again, on sale. I'll just close off the point about sales with this. Obviously, looking at games being discounted makes my answer for this question very personal to me. It's a very subjective experience when it comes to buying games. I'm not like those YouTube influencers out there who get paid to make videos on the latest releases, and they're clamoring for views as soon as that game comes out. Obviously, they have a different perspective when it comes to spending $80 or whatever the price tag is. But for me, with a full-time job and this just being a hobby, and there being far too many games in the world to play, I will stick to games being no more than $30 or so if I can help it. And again, on the Switch, I have to lift that up to about $55, $60, but that's okay. That is just one of the concessions that I've made in this last generation of gaming. I'm going to change things up a little bit, and instead of moving on to the graphics, I just want to switch the order here and talk about gameplay next, because combined with the value for your money, I feel like gameplay is the most important thing to consider, especially when you're talking about a full price game. Now again, you throw some discounts in there, and something like Metroid Dread at $55 Canadian is well worth it. 10 hours for 100%, but it was a really fun 10 hours. Everything looked great. If I wanted to at any point, I could take my time with it. I could replay the game, knowing what I know, trying to take on a couple bosses or a couple areas in different orders. And the action sequences are always satisfying to do, no matter how many times you repeat them. What about a game from my childhood? Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards. So again, another relatively short game when you compare it to an RPG or something like that. But the innovation in this title, and the way that you can combine the power-ups, it being satisfying to play and satisfying to discover so many different things in the game, makes this well worth the price tag. What about as I take a look at some of my GameCube games here? Now, I don't remember how much these cost at the time, and maybe FIFA would have been a little more expensive than this Dragon Ball Budokai Fighter. I don't know. This was recommended to me by a friend. Just didn't quite do it for me. I'm not somebody who enjoys fighting games, memorizing combos. This game, however, ended up being a hidden gem on the GameCube for me. Loved it. My family loved it. It feels like it was back in time enough, just archaic enough so that everything was simplified, but they focused on fun and having the game feel good. The passes, the shots, the sprinting in the game. And they didn't overcomplicate things, having to strive for better graphics, having to sacrifice the simplicity and the smallest mechanics to try to make a big grand spectacle out of the game. So again, just bringing up a couple of games that may have been similar in price at the time and showing that you don't always get the same type of gameplay, you don't always get the same value, no matter how the game is priced. One more thing that I wanted to bring up with gameplay was when it comes to these long-running series, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Pokemon, and what is it that you're waiting for? Do you want the developers to continue the games in the main line in the way that you're used to? Or are you expecting them to innovate for the better? For example, going from whatever Pokemon we had on the 3DS to the ones on the Switch, Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet. Sword and Shield in very many ways was still a relatively linear experience. Yes, it had some open areas, but those were confined to just a couple of routes in the map. The exploration was really just what we had on the 3DS as well. Scarlet and Violet tried to give us a little bit more when it came to exploration, open world, how the Pokemon were displayed in that open world, but obviously it had many shortcomings as well. It didn't grip people the way that they wanted it to. I personally was let down by a lack of assets on the map. The graphics obviously were something that were hotly talked about online. And even the Pokemon, I feel like we were, 10 generations in, and we still hadn't gotten Pokemon existing in the world in believable ecosystems. No, if you want that, you have to play Pokemon Snap. Well, why can't we get that in the mainline? You guys have enough money to make the games. But I will leave the complaining at that because those are too many topics that are better suited for other videos. One series that I'm looking forward to hearing your opinions on is Final Fantasy. If you are a fan who had been keeping up with the releases, 13, 15, 16, I really want to know what you thought, or what you expected, I should say. 13 for me was a huge disappointment, and so I didn't have any good expectations going into 15 until I heard one of my friends saying, it's actually a pretty good game. That commentary was counter everything else that I'd heard online. And then I played 15, and I really enjoyed it. I understand it's not a typical Final Fantasy game. It does a lot to capture bits and pieces of the universe and the lore in little Easter eggs and things of that nature. But if you give somebody 1 through 9, and then you have them play 15, they're not going to know what just happened to their series. I completely get it. 16, I haven't played it. The 7 remakes, I haven't played them. What I want to hear from you about this series is what are your expectations with it, and where has the direction of the series taken you? And what is your stance on supporting it financially now? Are you somebody who's only sticking with the 7 remakes and you've ditched the mainline titles? Or are you someone who still supports the mainline titles, day one purchases? Or maybe you're still interested, like me, but there's no way you're going to be spending full price. And even if I did have a PlayStation, I wouldn't buy Final Fantasy 16 day one. No way. Now we can move through the rest of the categories a little bit quicker. And these ones, again, these have no bearing on whether or not I'll buy the game. At least unless they are atrociously bad. I'm not going to consider them when it comes to making my purchase. Gameplay and value. Those are the two most important things. But if on the Steam reviews, everyone's saying that this game is terribly optimized, really buggy, does not perform well, okay, that is something to consider. We'll just lump that in with, that's its own category, performance. That aside, though, let's go into graphics, visuals, art style. You know what? This is something that might enhance my feeling and whether or not I'm getting value out of the game while I'm playing it. So Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, I did my review for that earlier this year. That is a game that I was continually impressed by. Go to a new area, it's huge, it's awesome, it's decorated beautifully, the color scheme and the color palette are out of this world. And it's the kind of thing where you stop and stare and it makes you go, yeah, this is worth playing this game. Which is really funny that it would have that much weight compared to something like the gameplay, the action, the combat, the exploration. But when a game does graphics and visuals that well, it is worth commending and worth noting. The next category here, music and sound effects. I would say since I had my Switch, so I don't know, going back to 2019 or so, I've really started to hone in and focus on the sound effects and the sound design in games. The Batman games have good sound design. I just played Batman Arkham Origins last year. Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild. These are games, and Zelda's always been good about this. Think about Ocarina of Time. When you have the metal boots on, the iron boots, they have the different stomping sound effect. I'm looking at my Nintendo 64 cases here. Donkey Kong 64, the different weapons that every Kong has. Every bullet, so to speak, that you fire from one of their weapons has a different splat effect. I think so. I don't think I'm hallucinating or misremembering. Even something like this, Chameleon Twist. The sound of the tongue as it extends from your chameleon is something that I really appreciate. And like when you're being exposed to all those nice environments in the different games, I feel like sound design really goes a long way to, again, not making up for bad gameplay or a lack of good gameplay, but enhancing the experience and maybe making you feel like, you know what, this is worth $65 instead of $60. I'm okay with that because all the little details are so well done. Speaking of details, I'm going to swap the order of a couple of these again, and I want to talk about the feel of a game. For me, this is less about the controls, because for me, controls are more black or white. Either the game is controlled well, the character that you control, I should say, moves properly, doesn't get stuck on objects. That's really straightforward. I don't need to go in detail about that. What I look at now for those little details the control mapping. And do they let you remap controls if it's a bit of an awkward control scheme? I can't remember off the top of my head what game did it poorly, but I do remember I've actually reached for 2 games here. So Luigi's Mansion 3, do you like the vacuum and the way that you move it up and down when you're aiming? I thought it was really well done in this game. I've heard people complain about it, in Luigi's Mansion 2 especially. I don't know if that's different in the Switch version, but I remember playing it on the 3DS, sorry. You had to use X and Y to make Luigi look up and down on the Y-axis. You get used to it, and I don't really think that they could have done it a better way than that. So that was okay. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Compared to Definitive Edition, the first game in the Hyrule Warriors series, they added more abilities. And I feel like the way that they included the abilities on different menus that you pop out with one button press, really well done, feels really comfortable. That's the kind of thing that I look at. And again, when it goes well, fantastic. Doesn't bother you in the slightest. When there's a problem with how the game feels or how you have to navigate through the menus and everything, that's when you start to feel like, oh, this is getting cumbersome. I shouldn't have to be going through all these obstacles just to do simple actions. And it starts to feel like the game is maybe not worth it as much, because at that point it impacts on the gameplay too. So just thought I would throw that feel category in. Finally, the last section that we're going to talk about here, the story and the writing. I don't play games for stories. I don't care. You're not going to sell me on a good story. You're going to sell me on good gameplay. But when I play a game and it has a good story, I'm pleasantly surprised and I get invested in it and I care about the game and the world more. That might be the difference between me playing the first game and continuing the sequel versus dropping it then and there. So Xenoblade, I had such a great time with Xenoblade Chronicles 1, our definitive edition on the Switch. I liked the world, it bought me in entirely, and I'm ready to go play the second game now. However, when it comes to a game like The Last of Us 2, and I haven't played it, but this is one of the reasons why, and it seems like everyone's just going back and forth on different plot points, and, you know, some people enjoy the gameplay, they like the stealth, they like the gore and the action. It just doesn't do anything to convince me to buy it. And to drive that point home, look at the games that I have here. Metroid Dread, I didn't play it for the story. I like Samus, I like exploring, and I like the story that develops within the game, but I'm not playing this as some part of continuation of the Metroid lore. That's kind of cool in the Prime series, but I don't need it to enjoy Metroid. I love it for the exploration. Hyrule Warriors, this is a fan fiction, right? So, cares about the story. It's cool to see these characters getting involved. This one does more for fleshing out the Tears of the Kingdom and the Breath of the Wild story. So I'll give this one a few points for that. Luigi's Mansion 3, again, you know that the story is going to be bare bones. It's just cool seeing Luigi in new environments with all these ghosts appearing, and so on and so forth. Same thing for my Nintendo 64 games. Same thing here as I make a mess with my GameCube games. This had a pretty cool story, Gladius, but the main thing here that I love is the gameplay. Geist is verging on that interesting story, but again, it's the gameplay, and again, it's the gameplay. I'm going to finish this video now giving a few more examples of games, some that disappointed in some of those categories, and they made me feel like, oh no, this is maybe not worth the money. And then other games where they really excelled in certain categories, almost on par with the gameplay. And for some people, that might be enough reason to invest in those titles. So when it comes to the value for your money, I feel like Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is worth mentioning because it's a remaster, right? It's the Definitive Edition, but why get it on Switch for the Switch's price tag as opposed to playing it on the Wii? Well, I can tell you that the game looked fantastic, and from what I understand, there were a lot of quality of life enhancements made to make the game feel more comfortable, make the game play a little bit smoother. So I have no regrets, and I'll give you the two extremes here. No regrets paying for the Switch version instead of pirating and playing for free on the Wii U or the Wii or whatever consoles that are released on. I was more than satisfied with my purchase here. When it comes to feeling satisfied with your purchase because of the gameplay that it provides, I feel like Tears of the Kingdom is the perfect example of that. So earlier I talked about innovation in the same series, and a lot of people were wondering, well, what does Tears of the Kingdom have to offer over Breath of the Wild? Isn't this just Breath of the Wild 2? And as a fan of both games, both of them good enough to be in my top 5 games of all time. I love Zelda. They are very distinct experiences. Breath of the Wild is absolutely a game that you can go back and play for the first time, and you're not going to be feeling like, there just needs to be something else here. But when you play Tears of the Kingdom, the fact that they allow more vertical spaces, going into the mountains, going underground, the fact that there's different abilities that change how you view the world and how you act upon it, really make it a fun game to play. And a unique experience. Worth mentioning the uniqueness. There's no game like it. I hate to bring this game up in a negative way, but I feel like I have to because it's how I honestly feel. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I played that and it was okay. I really thought it was an overrated game. Could be the Donkey Kong platforming specifically, but it needed more animal companions. I feel like my memories of playing the games on the Super Nintendo were full of Rambi, the rhino, and the other animal companions, and this game just didn't have enough. Also, when you compare it to the game that released before it, Donkey Kong Country Returns, that I played on 3DS, there's just way too many similarities that for someone like me who's looking for more out of the games, playing both of them was a bit of a waste of time. So you can take your pick between Donkey Kong Country Returns HD on the Switch or Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I personally feel like Returns had better level design overall, and it was a little more fun for me finding collectibles and the secrets in that game. I don't know, maybe Tropical Freeze just didn't gel with me, and it is the better game, but just thought I'd throw that caution out there to people who are looking at getting back into Donkey Kong. When it comes to graphics, art style, and the visual design, I feel like the Sniper series is an interesting example. These games go on sale all the time, and so you can buy any of the titles, virtually all of them, for $3 to $5 each. But let's say you only have so much time. So which game do you want to play? I've recommended both Sniper Elite V2 and Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts. And if you're somebody who cares more about the graphics, then go play Ghost Warrior Contracts. When I played this game last year, I emphasized the experience and exploring the world, coming upon these empty areas where there's no enemies, and you just look at what the designers put in the game. Sunrise or a sunset on the water, the beautiful snowy landscapes, or switching it up a little bit and being immersed in these lush, jungly areas. If you're someone who enjoys video game environments and that was how you're splitting hairs between these games, then that would be my recommendation to you. When it comes to music and sound design, I feel like this would be the absolute last reason why you would ever tell somebody to play game X over game Y. I'm trying to think of games in the same series where they offer different experiences, and you would pick the one that has better music just because of that reason. Obviously, there's games like Undertale that excels because of its soundtrack. There are rhythm games. There's a game that I just played, Songbird Symphony. It's a type of rhythm platformer, and again, you would play it for the music and for that gameplay. But in the same series and with AAA games, the best one that I can come up with is Pokemon. Let's say you haven't played a Pokemon title since the 3DS. If you were looking for something different, obviously it has different gameplay, different battling and catching mechanics, but I also feel like the way that it immerses you in the world and the way that it changes it up with remixes of the music and the sound design, again, the Pokeballs hitting and landing. Pokeballs are made out of wood, so they have the different clank sound effect. There's just a lot that's different there. I greatly enjoyed the soundtrack, and so I feel like if I had to look for some AAA series, then yeah, it would be that. Pokemon for something different when it comes to the music. Next, when it comes to story and the writing, I've always said The Witcher has one of the best stories as it continues from 1 through 2 and to 3. So if you're somebody who only played one of the games in that series, or you haven't gotten to that series yet, I feel like that is a good investment for some story-based games. And you'll enjoy everything else about them as well. The characters, the gameplay, the exploration, the worlds, the fantasy. Playing through Witcher 1 to 2 and to the most AAA of them all, Witcher 3. I have another game here, Unicorn Overlord. Maybe you're a fan of the Fire Emblem series. Maybe you're somebody who has way too many strategy RPGs to choose from. So if you're looking for eliminating those choices with story in mind, maybe you'd consider playing a game like this. Again, haven't played it, but I've heard good things about it. And same thing with triangle strategy. If you're somebody who cares about the feeling of the game, the way that the game handles, and the way that you get immersed in it, I feel like Elden Ring is a great example, especially if you're someone who didn't quite get latched on to Dark Souls 1 or 2, or maybe the earliest Demon Souls. You could play the Demon Souls remaster. I think we can be waiting for Bloodborne. Has that been confirmed yet? Anyways, Dark Souls 3 starts to pick it up and go a little bit faster. Personally, I wasn't a big fan of some of the other ways that the game felt. Elden Ring takes Dark Souls 3 and polishes it. So that's a game that felt incredible to play, and everything was really clean and immaculate in the menus. Same thing here. If you haven't played one of the Super Mario Bros. Games in a long time, I wasn't the big fan of the new Super Mario Bros. U that came to Switch. I felt like it was getting a little bit too floaty. But then when they moved it into the 3D world, it just made more sense there. It felt a lot better in this gameplay. I haven't played Wonder yet. That takes it back to the 2D experience. But, you know, if you have to pick and choose again because of how your games feel, then consider something like this for the Switch. And that is it. You could see how when it comes to giving examples of games that embody certain qualities more than the others, and this could really be a long video of recommendations and games to dissuade you on. I didn't even touch the indie games. I didn't even touch the games that I have on PC. I can't even think about them when I have the games on console in front of me here. Yes, this could have been a much longer video. What I'm looking forward to is you guys taking to the comments section, telling me, again, what it is that you value in a AAA title. But if you want to talk about indie games, if you want to talk about those mid-end games, go ahead and do that. Tell me if you're still buying games at full price. Tell me if you're only waiting for sale. And let me know what you think has happened to the value of a full-priced video game. That's it. Thanks everyone again for watching. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.